In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course-Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. True innovation happens when courage meets clarity. When you dare to question what's possible and tell what others don't see yet. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin. Today we're diving into the future of finance through AI, the mindset behind scaling startups from ideas to impact, and what it truly means to lead with conviction in an age of rapid change. Our guest today is Alexander Wulff, co-founder and CEO of Scaleup Finance, the company behind Nume, the world's first AI CFO. At just 20, Alexander co-founded his first company, Abeo, a deep tech startup spawned out of the Technical University of Denmark, and went on to raise over 20 million across multiple rounds, including Denmark's largest seed rounds at the time. Over the past decades, he's built, scaled, and exited companies while publishing 3 best-selling books in Denmark. Today, he's reshaping how startups think about financial leadership, strategy, and intelligent innovation. If you enjoyed this discussion, please do it well now with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Alexander Wulff, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you, Sam. I'm great. And thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was just telling you about our goal to have a guest from each country. We start with you today in Denmark with the fastest growing companies. That's not too bad. That's not too shabby. And I'm very, very happy to be able to introduce you from a common contact and get into this podcast episode. But to kick us off, please tell us more about Scaleup Finance.
Yeah, well, Scaleup Finance is, in short, a tech-enabled CFO service. We help a lot of startups, especially here in Scandinavia and in the UK. And then the new, very, very exciting thing that we're doing is we've built, I think, the world's first AI CFO. It's still in private beta. It's called Nume, that we are releasing quite soon. So hopefully we can bring all that CFO service that we have done for the last 4 years, bring it global.
Nice. I want to always begin with the genesis of your story. Obviously, you were an entrepreneur very young in life, which is very similar to my story also. For you, when did you get this sort of entrepreneurial spark? Where does that come from your side?
It came quite suddenly, I'd say, because when I was in high school and for many years when I was young, I actually thought that I had to go in and climb the corporate ladder, and I actually cared quite a lot about getting good grades and a high GPA, so maybe I could become a consultant in one of those big consultancy companies, and then fast track my career from there. But certainly when I landed at university, or I got into Copenhagen Business School, I met a couple of guys, and after one of the exams, we went down to a local pub and got really drunk. And then one of us got the idea for writing a book, and that never left my actually we were just joking, that's a funny idea. But over that weekend, when I sobered up, the idea never left. So the first thing I did when I got into uni Monday was actually that I talked to Peter, who ended up becoming my co-author, and said, "Hey Peter, I know that we're joking a lot, but I actually think you could write this book. I actually think there's a market for this." And then we just pursued it relentlessly, getting tons of rejections from publishers who said that, you can't really write books for young people anymore because they find all the information online. But long story short, after I think we had been pitching for more than half a year, we got a publisher to give us a contract, wrote the book, and it became the number 1 bestseller in Denmark over in a month. And after that, I was like, holy moly, man! If this is like this book, this idea came just, from, it was our invention. It came out of this brain and, my co-author's brain.
Sure.
If we could do that, what couldn't we then do? Building businesses, starting our own business. So it was actually the first time I was like, you don't need to work for other people. You can just, do what do stuff on your own.
Yeah. How old were you when you wrote that book?
Uh, I think we were 19 or something like that.
19, yeah. What's the name of it?
So like it was written in Danish, but it was called. We were inspired by. Do you know this dating book called the Game?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But we were inspired by that, so we called it the Great Game, like the game, the game about the grades. It
Sure.
was basically about how you could hustle yourself to getting good grades in high school.
Very nice, very nice. So, all right, so that started very young for you, and then your first company was Abeo, right? That's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, yeah.
And and this was very interesting. You were talking to me about this the first time we've met each other, but you really build it around sort of a non-sexy VC concept, and obviously which is concrete. And you were talking to me about the sort of going the construction route, which was quite far from what you were anticipating, perhaps to go first and foremost. But tell me about, you receive a lot of no's, obviously, and I know everybody was just telling you know what, this will fail. Don't even try it, and it didn't. Perhaps tell me more about two things here. First of all, tell me more about who do you think basically the knows from, the real knows from, I suppose, and who should matter, perhaps their opinion should matter. And afterwards, how can we, from those in which I suppose are irrelevant, and you're going the other side from a contrarian mindset type of thinking. I was just listening to this Peter Thiel interview about you shouldn't have a contrarian mindset for the sake of having one. You should really start to sort of see perhaps that from the perspective of the world, many things are accepted, widely accepted, and are simply not true. And those who basically the first one to find something that is not true and capitalize on it from a market perspective, obviously ripples the rewards. So how do you decide which no to accept, and which one do you build an empire around, perhaps?
Yeah, like maybe just a quick note before I answer the question. I think it's very interesting what you're describing there, because I have often reflected on the fact that I feel like many of the best ideas out there, or at least the most innovative ideas, they often start out sounding crazy. They sound like a joke, and I even read. I think it was I think actually I read it during my studies in this entrepreneurship course, where this author wrote about the fact that like actually the first instinctive reaction a lot of people have to some of the most innovative ideas the first time they were said was like they were laughing because it sounded so crazy. But yeah, like so when you then get this crazy idea, what when do you stop or when don't you stop? I think I might be the wrong person to ask because I never take no for an answer. I never accept a no. Of course, there is you do reach some kind of at some point you might realize, okay, I need to now close down this idea or something like that. But generally speaking, I would say you need to be ruthlessly persistent. I think the most successful founders and entrepreneurs out there, they are not necessarily the ones that are the smartest. They are just the ones that continue and continue and continue.
I agree with you for sure.
But I do think that when you are faced with a no, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, like and you continue to get no's, then of course you should take it as a sign that either you need to do something different, like iterate, improve, whatever, or you should, and if you can't do that, then maybe you have, explored all the possibilities of this idea. So there's both like a quality aspect and a quantity aspect. So every time you get a no, you should try to figure out why you're getting this. Like, is there something new you can do, something to improve it? And then, of course, at the same time, there's this quantity aspect that you need to just continue. There's if you try to sell your product, you probably need to pitch quite a lot because there's also something called an ideal customer profile, and maybe you're talking to the wrong people. So there is something also with volume and quantity, and it's the same thing with pitching. I remember, for example, I closed a VC round once where I didn't get a term sheet until after I think it was my pitch number 100, and I was very, very close to giving up there. But it
Yeah, persistence is such a key skill. Do you think you always had that in you, or perhaps were you able to? Because you had quite a bit of success. You're still a very young guy, and now at the head of again the fastest growing company in Denmark. So you don't get there by
I don't.
accident.
I don't. There are some others that are growing faster than us, but we have been growing faster.
Yeah, sure. And the so from that perspective, I suppose, Alexander, was persistence always something at your core? How do you, because you seem to me like, I mean, you wrote a book at 19, you seem like you read a lot of book. I suppose was it something learned or something that you think you were just perhaps born with more than other people?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm actually not sure. I think I'm just really impatient in a way, and I just like to. I think many founders share this kind of gene that they like to create. They like to build something that wasn't there before, and often that becomes very obsessed. Like you get really obsessed about an idea like that, so you basically can't stop. It's almost like something that haunts your head. It's a disease almost in your head, and once you get infected by, you want to do this thing like this, you don't look back. You just continue, and yeah. So it is probably something that you're born with in a sense, but I don't think everybody are just born to be founders and entrepreneurs. I think it's also something you can teach yourself. It's about exposing yourself to I don't know, the ecosystem or to ideas of great people, especially great people.
Yeah,
Once you meet ambitious people, smart people, intelligent people, that is infectious in itself.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's this very obviously famous quote, which is you're the average of the five people
Yeah,
you basically spend the most time with.
uh,
And I think it's such a key component of life. I always tell people when if you're not content with your result, change your environment, change what you do.
yeah,
Understand that you're a result of what you do constantly. And I was sort of going into this psychological, I suppose, cycle. And when basically you go from belief basically comes action, through actions comes habits creates results in that specific order. So if you're not perhaps happy with the results, think about your belief, and then from that think about the reaction change from it, perhaps to be able to change your behaviors and therefore change your results. It's I want to talk to you about obviously the rise of Nume, because it's sort of the next big thing perhaps that could be that will be quite revolutionary. Now, obviously you start with CFO-as-a-Service, right, which Scaleup is, and then you go to Nume, which is going to be AI. From your perspective, from a marketplace perspective, I suppose, what human bias or inefficiency is Nume solving that even elite CFOs perhaps couldn't? And tell us about how just effective it would be to use artificial intelligence, to be able to solve such thing.
mm. Yeah. So maybe like first of all, what we're doing with Noom right now is like we are trying to solve a really really big problem that has existed for decades. But that problem is that actually the vast part of the market, so to say, doesn't have a CFO for two very simple. Like I'm talking about SMEs, startups, small companies. Actually, we have some data on this in Scaleup Finance, and it's somewhere between 90 or 95% of all companies below 50 employees, they don't have a CFO, and also the vast majority of the 50 to 100 employee companies. So they have been kind of excluded from the market. They are left out. They can't afford a CFO. It's way too expensive to hire such a competent person. But also when you look at the finance function in so small companies, you don't have enough financial tasks, so to say, to justify hiring a full-time person. So we are really trying to focus on that. We believe that Noom, we can see it already right now on the demand we are getting, and that people signing up is also coming from CFOs and finance experts. But that was actually never our intent with Noom. It was actually not to build it for finance people, but I can totally see how it will also be helping those. The interesting thing is, so we don't think that, like, we are not here to make CFOs, jobless. We are here to augment them, but more importantly, we are here to give SMEs access to CFO competencies at a cost they can afford. And we are seeing some very interesting patterns right now in the user feedback we are getting, because some of our customers, they actually have maybe an internal finance hire, not maybe a real CFO, but somebody who's taking care of the finance admin. And a lot of the people that of our customers, they're now saying, hey, Nume is incredible because, and it's software, right? But it's available 24/7. And not only that, but when they have a question, if they need to get some kind of insight report, whatever, Nume gives them the response in like 10 seconds. And when they ask whoever is helping them with the finance, it can take everywhere from 2 hours to 2 days to a week before they get that question or insight answered. And then there's of course the affordability, and the fact that available 24/7. Then you can use your CFO also in the evenings and the weekends when you are working, and they might not be. So I think actually there are some very interesting things with Nume and as an AI CFO where it's simply better than human beings because it's software, because of the things I just mentioned. So that's quite interesting.
I was just talking to one of our partner actually yesterday. I was in Montreal for the jazz festival, and or excuse me, on Friday, and it was very interesting to me because I talked to him about exactly this, and the fact that we were about to interview you, and the fact that he was struggling with this concept that he's not a finance guy, but he understands how important it is, obviously. And one thing that you cite, which I want to circle back to because I think it was very interesting, is that a quote of yours is that Nume isn't a product; it's a financial co-founder built with code. Now, I want us to dive deeper into that. I suppose we all understand that finance is important, but from your perspective, having Nume as a real part of what the business basically that you're running is, not just one piece of software basically amongst others, but just really basically your financial co-founder. Go deeper into this idea, I suppose. Where do you see that being able to be led? Would that be perhaps give us a software in which we'll be able to make decision on its own? Tell me more about perhaps the full extent of that concept.
I actually think, we are of course thinking a lot about this and where it's going, and of course we have a lot of crazy futuristic ideas, and the one you just mentioned about autonomy is one of the things. Like we're not building that kind of stuff just yet, because we also think there's something, AI needs to mature, and like you need to be able to trust it, and finance is extremely important in the sense that there are some compliance things and stuff like that, and legal thing that you need to be aware of. So like a human needs to kind of be the decider in the end. So Nume as an AI CFO can kind of help augment you and make better decisions, but you really need to be in the loop. But once you trust it more, and once Nume kind of proves itself, then you would be more comfortable with actually having Nume make the right decisions. And yeah, let's just say we have a lot of ideas for taking that step into the future, but everything is so new with AI that there are also some more like structural things in the market, and just with our our behavior or how we interact with AI that needs to mature a little bit more. But I think it's going to augment you as a founder, as a CEO, in a pretty extreme way. Or for example, let's say that Nume figures out that you're spending too much money on different items, and maybe like just one example, like your insurances. Like we can easily imagine how Nume could go out into some kind of marketplace and actually get you a quote for a new kind of insurance that saves you a lot of money, and it actually just it asks permission, and then so like I just got 3 different quotes. This is the best one because I know everything about your company, and this is actually much better and it's cheaper. So do you allow me to kind of do that?
There's a lot of talks about AI hallucinations. Right, this concept in which AI, as we speak right now, specifically for things as complex as finances, where it needs to analyze data, it needs perhaps within a prompt, perhaps I don't know if it will be a chatbot like software. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like imagine, yeah, like kind of a Claude for finance. If you
Yeah,
have that picture in your head,
that,
then it,
that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what
yeah,
I thought. Just by you saying it, obviously, I never saw the product yet,
oh,
but we'll get there. And the from that perspective, I suppose when you're thinking about AI hallucinations, as you're way closer to that world than I am, and most of our audience is also, tell us about just how big of a deal it is, and what is perhaps the industry as a whole, people in which understand and perhaps use AI, are currently doing to be able to perhaps narrow this gap of what AI hallucination is.
Yeah, actually, the whole part about accuracy and not having hallucinations in the product has been like one of the key things that we have really where we have really taken some big leaps. And I'd say the brain that we have built with Nume, it has taken a long time. It is a lot of verification loops, a lot of different evils, that ensures the accuracy. I don't think we are done like really exploring what we can say about Nume's accuracy, because then there's also some liability and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, real people also make mistakes, especially when they work in spreadsheets. Actually, one of our CPO, he sent me this article the other day that actually showed the percentage of spreadsheets where there was like formula mistakes and all different kind of mistakes in them.
Oh, yeah, it's
So
great.
like it also depends a little bit on the what's the benchmark for accuracy, because for example Nume, I would say, is extremely accurate when it comes to all historical numbers, everything, where it's something that is hit back in time. But when it comes to forecasting and projecting, then it's like, what how can you make a number on the accuracy there? Because basically
Sure.
you're making assumptions about the future. So we differentiate between different levels of accuracy, in a sense that there's something where, okay, this is simply the right number, we know it 100% because we're talking about historical figures, but then like, how do you put a value to the accuracy of a forecast,
Yeah,
and of course,
the subjectivity of it. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's this, and again, and you just said it, and I'm very glad actually that you said it. But it seemed like there's this constant conversation now of, well, AI actually can make mistakes. Well, sure, but guess what, buddy? All of us makes mistakes, and this is where, to me, expecting AI to be perfect, when obviously we will never expect a human being to be perfect. I think there's a little bit of there's not only perhaps a lunacy in this concept that something can be perfect, perhaps outside of God, but I suppose to me there's this weird grappling in the market now about just, well, it's not perfect, and therefore we should not use it, or at least there's a lot of thought leaders having such a thought. For you, perhaps again, being this close to this world, when you're thinking about your tool as a sort of an AI finance master, perhaps as a
Yeah.
co-founder for the finance portion of what you'll be using, I suppose so you're talking about historical value, which seems to be very great, and then forecasting as something in which can be a little bit more difficult. I suppose that will also be depending on how good the prompt is, right? The human being actually using it. Would there be any training perhaps to give to make sure that people perhaps are using it to its fullest ability? Because that's another thing.
Yeah.
The AI is input output. So if your the input is not
Yeah.
what you really want, there's sometimes a gap in that result, which is not the fault of the technology. How do you perhaps intertwine all of that?
Yeah, so we have been working and are working on a lot of different things that address that specifically, because the market where we really trying to solve this problem is this vast part of the market that doesn't have a CFO. Like, actually, like the situation is that the finance function is de facto run and led by a non-financial CEO or founder, who just, okay, I'm also the CFO. And then that person might have, a bookkeeper who's helping out, or an accountancy company that is doing their books and payroll. But everything else is up to that person. So what we're seeing is that, when we talk to a lot of our customers, basically they see finance a bit as a black box. So they it's actually also quite difficult for them to, as you say, prompt, like, what should I know, like what what do I actually need to do as part of a monthly recurring finance cycle, or like just a yearly annual wheel? So we have various agents that are actually helping you and actually making suggestions for what you should ask or what you should look into, and it's all it's all agentic. Nume is proposing that. It's Nume is also helping clarify questions, stuff like that, if you're too vague. So Nume actually is trying to make sure that it understands whatever question you're asking in the right way. So there's a lot of that I think needs to be built in an AI CFO for it to actually do the job. And that's yeah. I won't give out all our secrets, but let's just say, those kind of things is what we're doing quite a lot. And then what we're also doing is, one of the key things is, when you get onboarded with Nume, you can at least connect your Slack account, and then we will generate a bespoke, we call it CFO responsibilities page for you, which is actually a lot of these like routine finance tasks that Nume will then be doing for you automatically and then sending to you in Slack. So so you don't need to log in, just like, I don't know, ChatGPT or Claude, and actually hit your keyboard and say, hey, I want you to help me with this. No, like Nume is doing this on with some kind of frequency, and is actually talking to you in Slack. So you don't need to do it, and then you get help with like how you can follow up.
Very nice. Very nice. The one thing that is a big marker in your story, Alexander, is that you were able to obviously raise capital, quite a lot, actually 20 million. You had obviously the largest seed round household funding of Denmark history, if I'm not mistaken. To me, I always have this thought in mind as a founder, in which we're able to basically have a company that I think Abeo was completely bootstrapped. Is that correct?
No, it was also VC.
It was okay, so it was also VC. Have you ever scaled a company without fundraising?
No, I have started a couple of companies in my teens that were just those like e-commerce stuff.
Yeah.
But after that, the serious companies I've done have actually all been VC backed.
I got it. For you, tell me about the sort of, I suppose, the anatomy of what it is to raise money at that perhaps extent. Where you were talking about persistence, and I'm sure that's certainly part of it, about the fact that you'll get a lot of no's before that yes comes around. But from your perspective, when is the right time to raise capital? Do you still believe perhaps in the bootstrap format of just, we'll use our own fund and nothing else on this? Tell me more about just, I suppose, how the finance portion of just how you actually finance your company happens, and what do you think is best in the current market?
Yeah, I think there has been a lot of chatter over the last years, and especially with AI, because it's made it much easier to start a company, build a product. You can do it faster, you can do it cheaper, and you can scale faster. So there's a lesser need for kind of raising that money. But also there's a very famous saying that the best way to raise VC money is not needing it. So I think there's a very good case to be made for trying to think your company not as a VC case, because if you want to take the VC route, then you can, it's kind of the best way to set it up for yourself by not being reliant on it.
Yeah.
And then when you do raise, it kind of changes the name of the game suddenly.
It's interesting. Jack Ma from Alibaba had a similar thought. He said that you always want to be in fundraising mode, because when you would really need it, then they won't give you any money. Yeah. So perhaps make sure that you're fundraising when you don't need it, which I think is an interesting thought. For you, what's your I suppose your book rule for being able to scale with integrity without losing the soul of the company? Tell me about that balance there.
Yeah. Well, no, said without losing the soul of the company, like that has a very negative tone to it. But I think I understand the question. It is also it's fucking hard. I remember in Scaleup when we started 5 months after we launched, and suddenly we were just hit by this incredible wave of demand and customers that came to us, and we grew from 0 to 1 million AI, and I think it was in month 11. And suddenly it was, fuck, we need to hire people, and we had very few processes, very few structures, and all of that. The most important thing during such a process, I think, is that like, of course, it's hiring the right people. And one of the learnings we've really made is that whatever really characterizes your culture, don't compromise. We have probably made some mistakes over the past years where we accepted, like, it's very clear, it's very easy for me to say today because it's much more clear to look back, right? But we found ourselves under big growth pressure, and candidates we just need to kind of hire. And then when we ask some of these questions that to make sure they are cultural fit, some of them might have said some, indicate that they would tolerate this kind of thing, cultural value, whatever it might be, coming into the office, because we're actually an office first company. We also give some flexibility to work from home, but generally speaking, we're an office first. And the candidates that worked, let's just say, the least good were the ones when we look back at the hiring process, where they didn't say no to the things we said, but also didn't say, that's exactly what I want. Like, this is like, oh yeah, I'm so excited. That is totally me. And that has really become clear to me. Like, people should not just indicate they tolerate.
Peter Drucker obviously famously said that culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is a very interesting quote. I love that you mentioned the culture portion, because I think that's my understanding of the market. But as we're going to be more and more of an hybrid between human and technology, right? All these AI tools that up the market and so on. I really think that, again, culture, and like you said, not having people that are sort of, oh, it's fine here. I'm doing just well enough, perhaps. Chris Williamson on his podcast talk about this, right? Sometimes it's better for the situation to be worse, because now you actually are in action mode. If it's just barely okay, you'll just sort of survive, and you're just basically go along with the program without having these people, perhaps, that allow themselves to really accommodate for these grander visions. For you, Alexander, as you're seeing now, like you said, that technology is playing a bigger and bigger role. That's why the bootstrap perhaps are saying that you might not even need VC money in this case. I really want to hear your take about when you're thinking about the hiring process. Steve Jobs was saying that it's way better to have a small circle of A player than a huge one of B players. Do you agree with that? And how do you stay consistent to that framework, even in those growth spurts when you need to do hire on the fly and so on?
No, I think I've also read a lot of very smart people say the same, and from my experience, it's 100% true. Because like, one of the big problems is if you don't hire A players, then you'll lose your A players because they don't like to work with B players, right? So it is really, really important to keep up the talent density. Because otherwise it's just like this self-reinforcing loop where you then lose, the A players, and then it just goes to shit.
No, interesting. A players don't want to work with B players. I see that all the time, by the way. I think that's one of the realest thing that you need to understand, is that it's not only the cost of opportunities of not having better people and therefore helping to grow perhaps from it. It's also, like you said, this cost of regression, because you're not doing such thing, and therefore the greatest people are getting out. Very interesting. The you already published basically 3 books, which I think is very interesting. We're talking about your first one, right, which was a Danish one, and the fact that you just sort of jump on it very, very seriously, even if it sort of came out as a joke. For you, I mean, do you do it because you love writing? I suppose. What's the why behind it, first and foremost?
To be honest, the first book, that was kind of, I still think back to that as being, the one that is really close to my heart, right? It was an idea where I felt me and my co-author, we had some important insights I would have liked to have had myself before I started at high school. So I actually felt like I had a very important message that would be valuable to people. There's of course, as you write a book and when you do it more times, of course you get some experience in like putting down your thoughts on paper 100%. And it is a good skill to have also in, I don't know, running a company, leadership and raising money and selling, because one of the most important thing, if we take fundraising, let's take that example, because I feel like as a CEO founder CEO in a venture-backed company, there is just like this one thing that nobody else, like you cannot outsource it. It's your job, and it's the most impactful job, because either you go bankrupt or you raise the round. Um, and that in such a process, one of the most important things when you pitch and in the entire fundraising process is being concise, being clear, being able to, because you cannot, like VCs, they have so limited time that they are basically trying to, I don't know, shut you down for a minute. What they're trying to they're just giving you the hard questions from minute one of a pitch to see how you respond. So you need to be able to just be concise, be clear, and of course written language kind of is the predecessor of then way it.
It is storytelling is the oldest drug, as I heard. I don't recall who it is, but it's a pretty good one. So you think that's how it was? It helped your writing, perhaps. So your writing has helped you in I suppose refining your pitch, and I suppose being able to be concise, because like you said, and I've been, I raised money myself for my first company and so on. It is very, very, very difficult. Like you said, I think for me personally, it is the hardest thing, period. That would be
What did you find to be the hardest part of
the hardest part about it is, well, it's two things. I already asked you about the question to, I suppose, how do you stay consistent and not lose the soul of the company through it? The reason why I ask you in this terminology is because when you're a bootstrap and use your own funds, you have your vision, all the KPIs are the ones you set. When you bring on VC money, then it's different. Then there's their KPIs, and there's shareholders and so on. So to me, that balance is so important. I think that's the hardest thing for me. I've never had, when I have an idea, I'm a pretty good salesperson, so I'm able to sort of get to the place where I'm able to fund these projects. But I would say that doing that with the right investors that are not only there to capitalize perhaps on their investment, but perhaps to help you as an external and sort of silent partner that they typically play, is super important. But two is that is balancing that with, all right, where we want to go, where they want us to go, and making sure that there is alignment between those paths. That's for sure the hardest thing for me. You talked about how it helped you refine your basically your writing, help you with refining your pitch. Has that helped you with defining your leadership at all? Because leadership to a certain extent is very similar, right? There's I think it was there's this great podcast called Founders Podcast, which a lot of people are addicted to. A lot of us founders are addicted to. But he talks very, very, very often about the fact that he basically has this mentality of having a few mantras that you repeat consistently, because those are the one in which define who you are, define the company. Do you agree with that? And how has writing perhaps help you with having the clear framework of thought to perhaps be a better leader?
Yeah. I don't think I would put too much emphasis in my experience on like, I don't think writing is like, it's a good tool, but I actually like to be much more verbal, because I feel like I have a much bigger impact when I can verbally address things with people. Like, it is 10 times more potent. So I think I see more like the written style as something that supports the verbal pitch or the verbal delivery, whatever, however, and it's, you cannot just live from just running around shouting and talking, and then then you're like, hey, now I'm off, and then there's no clear, because writing is a good way to kind of also summarize and be concise and those kind of things. But I think that the best way to really, I don't know, infect people with the vision, is that like they need to feel it, they need to feel it on they need to see it in your eyes. So I wouldn't put the written stuff too much up on a pedestal, even though I of course use it a lot.
Yeah, yeah. No, I got it. I got it. I was having a discussion about the fact that a lot of our communications, even with AI, I don't know if that will be a future actually on Noom, but is now basically by voice, right? Instead of typing, you now just basically give them what you want by voice, and that accelerate the process quite a bit. Do you believe that when you see, I was talking with one of our ghostwriter clients also, and she mentioned the same thing. She thinks that the human faculty of actually typing be rarer and rarer because now you can just talk to the machine and
100%.
text is generated. What's your take on that?
I can't tell you how much I'm starting to use ChatGPT voice mode. I'm doing some like relatively often. I go for a walk, just around in a park or something like that. Or actually also during the day here, we are very close to the Copenhagen lakes, just to think, and that's where I get some good ideas. And then I'm starting to find myself using ChatGPT on voice mode, and it's just fucking insane. I had this experience the other day where I was like, because I had AI in my ears, and it was just reacting to my mouth. I actually got this sensation where it felt like I had AI in my body in a way. It's pretty weird to describe, but I was just so freaking efficient during that like 1 hour where I was like just spitballing, and I asked ChatGPT to go and research some stuff and write some prompts for deep research that I would then run when I got back. And so it went to the internet, and then I said, okay, that's interesting. Give me some more critique or feedback on this idea, and then said, okay, let's try to build this idea a bit further. And we are going to do the same with Noom, because I believe, right now, I believe everybody would agree with this. The main the main barrier to get value out of AI, because it is so extremely potent, is this. It's your keyboard. Like you need to do the right. It is like yeah. So you need to be able to break down that barrier, and it's just easier to say things than write things on your keyboard. I remember even back when ChatGPT came in the like initially, I wasn't using it like as much, but then like the more I used it, the more context it had about me, the less I had to explain about, for example, Scaleup Finance. And then I was like, shit, now my prompts need to be much shorter, because I can basically, hey, like based on everything you know about our company or something like that. And it has just, it, it has meant that my use of just ChatGPT has really exploded exponentially, and that's due to the memory, and so my prompts are shorter. But now,
Nah, it's to me. I go on morning walks every
yeah,
single day, right? Every single day I go on morning walks, and I just look at my notes before this. I'm 77 days in a row now with just asking ChatGPT, hey, this is the date. This is what I'm basically thinking now. This is what I'm envisioning. This is what I'm perhaps putting together. And
mm,
the voice command, like you said, is so powerful because
yeah,
instead of having me texting and just looking at my phone down instead of enjoying perhaps the
yeah,
singing and so on, you just say it as you're talking to a friend. I really think it is sensational, and I agree with you that most of the feature of us typing on the keyboard, I think that's gonna be has been, perhaps as the youngsters are saying, quite soon. And I just think you're more productive. You're typically also much more accurate because when you're talking, you typically sometimes you'll go in circles, sometimes you'll repeat
yeah,
yourself, and that's just basically refine the prompt to really be precise on what you want. When you're typing, you don't really do that naturally. You
yeah.
say one thing and then you're careful to not repeat it because that's just the way writing works typically. So I think it
and
is.
and it has become really good at transcribing what you say. I was looking at my prompt, from talking to it, and then I was like, okay, it has almost gotten every single word I was
Yes,
saying true,
that's
right?
exactly
And
right.
I was walking outside, and there was some wind. But yeah,
That's exactly right. And it's so interesting you mentioned this because we both have accents, right? I have a French accent. You have a
exactly. Yeah.
Scandinavian accent. And I can say this for a fact. Even 4, 6 months ago, it was not nearly as good.
Oh,
ChatGPT is not
100%.
nearly as good to transcribe with an accent. If you're from New York, obviously you have no problem. But if you're from elsewhere, sometimes there were some words in which we pronounce with the different tone, and the syllables are not said the same way, and it was much harder. Now, like you said, it's pretty much flawless, and because of his context awareness, even if one or two words is a little bit misplaced, he still gets it in the big picture, which is what really matters at the end of the day.
But I've even found that if I speak Danish, it's right now it feels like it's equally good. And and then sometimes because I need to produce basically everything in English, but yeah. So actually, I was checking the transcription. Then I had been speaking Danish, and then it had basically just live. I don't know, just translated to English, and I was like, but this is also perfect. So it's a yeah, it's
It is phenomenal, and some of our partners actually, good people at the Great Discovery. Shout out if you're listening to this podcast. They are working on a tool, basically a transcribing tools to be able to make sure that on Zoom calls and podcasting already gets there. This platform
yeah.
automatically basically is able to transcribe in 47 languages, and we're gonna be having, and this is my take, and maybe someone will build this for the mass markets. We're very close to having there's this ear basically plug, or some type of systems in which you'll be able to go somewhere as a tourist and be able to have live transcription instead of having to learn the
Yeah.
language. Very close to that also, because now that AI is so great, sure, I can learn Japanese if I have a love for language, and I also want to learn Japanese just for the sake of the perhaps immersing myself with the culture. But let's be very honest, how long will it take to basically learn Japanese, and how much of that will take perhaps a hold on everything else that you're doing, which is quite major. So if we're very close to not only having our phone, you can just hold your phone and to somebody's mouth and it's decent, but I think we're gonna have live transcription very soon. A device,
I
or maybe
100% agree. Yeah.
yeah, you do.
Yeah, we are 100% going to get it. Yeah, I had German in school, and I have some friends right now that also like to speak other languages, so they're trying to learn, but it's incredibly hard, right? And it requires like hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Oh yeah,
And
it's very
I'm not even sure that I ever want to learn new languages, because why should I? Why would I? Like, it's such a big time investment when I could be using that time for other things.
yeah, no, exactly,
But
exactly.
I'm almost there where I seriously want some kind of recording device that is just on me all the time, so it records all my conversations and like just everything, so I can I want more AI in my life. And of course there's a lot of, I don't know, legal kind of things,
Yeah, yeah,
a lot of
privacy.
people, privacy, people, everybody probably doesn't like if I just record them, but that's where I am, because it's making me so hyper productive. So if I could just ask AI about whatever, something I did 3 hours ago, I met somebody, could you just do, and I didn't even need to sit down and do that prompt, because it knows everything. And
Very interesting.
I don't know how the future is, now that OpenAI hired that Johnny Ive guy,
Correct.
working on that hardware device. I don't know how it's looking, because of course there are some pretty big privacy things that needs to be figured out.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this concept of Big Bang, right, 1984 by George Orwell and so on, Orwell. You want to be careful because there's a distinction between being useful and being outright basically just an invasion of privacy. And
Yeah.
there's a big conversation about that without a doubt. Alexander, you just mentioned about the fact that you were close to park in Copenhagen. Obviously, that's where you're currently building, but you're thinking global, and you're a serial entrepreneur. You understand that this can be, obviously, it's a piece of software, so it can be used everywhere. I want to ask you a very specific question, basically, which is, what's one advantage that you see of launching a startup from Denmark that most people underestimate? Because let me tell you why we say this.
Yeah.
And I'm in America, I'm a Canadian, but I go to the US every 3, 4 weeks. And and I'm gonna say this with all my heart, and being as lovely
Do
as
we have a bad image in the States
but
and Canada from Scandinavia?
no,
Or not?
not
Oh, okay.
not at all. Actually,
Okay. Okay.
us Canadian actually love the Scandinavian, but
Okay.
we do have this sense that we are the center of the universe, though, and
Yeah.
therefore, if they're not building from here, they have a disadvantage some way somehow. So I want you to tell us more about just how strong the startup culture is in Denmark at large, and what's one advantage of launching a company in a Scandinavian country.
I actually think the main disadvantage we have is the market size. The US and Canada. It's such a large market that is and then there's of course a lot of talent density in some of the clusters that you have over there. But Europe, we have a lot of regulatory issues. But okay, if we do have one advantage, like okay, this might actually be a funny answer. I don't think you would be expecting this because
Okay.
it's actually one of the reasons I started my first company in Denmark, as one of the only countries in the world. Even Sweden and Norway only have it to a very small extent. It's not the same. We actually get money to go to high school and university, and it's actually quite a lot. In Denmark, like first of all, going to university is free for everybody. You pay
Yes.
$0. But most people know that, like about
Yes.
Scandinavia, yeah. But I don't think you knew that we get $1,000 approximately the 5 years we go to university. It's a free grant. You don't need to pay it back. It's free money. Uh,
$1,000 a month.
a month, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, it's not because it will, you can just live off of the. Although I'd say some Danish students I know, with a little bit of money from their parents or something like that, they almost actually make a living out of it. But the reason I'm saying it is that me and my two previous co-founders, we started right after getting into it. We're first year at the bachelor's program, and we had two kind of choices. We could go out and take some kind of student job and work while we were studying. It's very common in Denmark. It's actually expected of you that you work like 15 to 20 hours, especially when you
Yes.
go to business school. But all the big brands, the big logos, I don't know, Microsoft and all the big four companies, stuff like that, they have like, I don't know, a dozen of these student jobs come popping up every single year. And then you have 200 applications. So we're like, why choose to go like to compete with hundreds of other students for these crappy student jobs where you just get coffee where you just get coffee and don't really do anything that you learn anything from. They're like, okay, right now we're actually getting paid $1,000 per month. Now is the best time to start a company, because the business
Yes.
model we were using was like, okay, the closer we get to the age of 30, the more likely it is that we have a wife, we have kids, we have
Absolutely.
some kind of apartment or like house or something like that. We have a high monthly cost. So how risk willing are you going to be in that?
That's right.
That were the two scenarios. Like, okay, so right now we couldn't. It was very easy to start a company, to be risk willing, because we have this safety.
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think more countries should do that? What's I suppose obviously you were able to take advantage of it, but
Yeah.
there's it's very, very expensive for the country. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But what do you I
It,
suppose, yeah,
it,
are
it,
you
it's a very, very debated topic in Denmark, because all the students, they say, hey, this grant is way too low, way too low. We can't live off it. And
all
then,
right?
now I'm getting old, right? And I'm, just every time I hear like this, an article in some kind of Danish newspaper that is debating this, and, somebody's making the case that it's because then the politicians want to cut it or something like that.
Sure.
And then there's this uproar. I'm like, guys, fucking look out into the world. We are one of we are probably we are the country where it's the highest, and there's only a few others that have it. And it does, of course, induce a little bit of, some people take advantage of it. And
Absolutely.
and then they are not really, they don't really want to take a job. But on average, I'd say Danes are very responsible, and most people, they see it as we saw it. But then you can't really avoid that some people kind of, take advantage
Well,
of
it's the same
it.
thing with Social Security and so on.
Yeah.
Some people, it's interesting to have a safety net, but there are some people that take advantage of it. Absolutely.
But I would say one thing. Now I've been following the U.S. Election quite a lot, and the political scene over
Oh yeah.
there, and they are, yeah, it's some interesting discussions. but I genuinely believe in making education free for all. Because I think it levels the playing field, and they are talking a lot about the student debt crisis over there. So of course it's a bit difficult for me to actually imagine a system where you have to pay for your education. There's
Yes.
probably a lot of people that disagrees with me, but I'm happy I'm from Denmark, and it was never and it's actually free.
Well, to me, education and should be as free as possible, and that's I think one of the key promise of the internet is that
Yeah,
look,
true.
as we
100%.
speak right now, you could be in the middle of Nigeria, all right, but you
Yeah,
have a phone to connect to the Wi-Fi, and you can take a university course on Coursera, and you have 90-day free of it if you want to just speed run it because you really don't have the money for it. It is amazing. We're getting closer to education being basically free. And is it free? No. In Canada, you need to pay to university. You don't get paid. Certainly not to go and with school. That's a very Danish thing. That's
yeah,
for sure. But to me, one of the promise, and that's one of the idea that I have even when I was 14, 15, very young. I always thought educations must be as free as possible and as readily accessible as possible. And that's one of the key promise of the internet. I don't see it going anywhere. Actually, I see it being less and less expensive as time go on, which is a beautiful thing. Because the truth is that, like you said, when you level the playing field, then what matters is the best idea. I
yeah,
do not
exactly.
care if the best idea emerge from Sierra Leone and what you look like, and as long as you're a decent human being, the rest perhaps of what you look like, your gender, how old you are, that's that's the old age, ladies and gentlemen. This
Yeah,
today, you can be pretty much any age and from any culture, and you have a great idea, you're able to perform it, and you can take over the world. And I think that's one of the exceptional things that we're able to do, and that's only been for what 15 years.
yeah,
I mean, it's incredible. You lived before the internet. Um, uh, I'm not trying to age you. You're actually very young. You're still very young. But but you definitely lived before the internet. How much, I suppose, for your education, since the Danish system is free and you're able to, and you seem like you're very well read. So I mean, you read a lot of books. How much, if you had to give me a split of how much of your education come directly from the internet as a medium, how much would that be, taking everything?
it's difficult to put a number on, but I have to say that I feel like I've been living through where computers were introduced when I was
Exactly.
going to elementary school, and then yeah, it's two pretty different, completely different worlds today, and then when
Oh, for
at
sure.
least part of my education, but I actually have a problem these days, and that problem is called YouTube, because I'm almost, sometimes I feel like shit, man. I'm addicted to this stuff, and like I'm not talking about funny cat videos or something like that.
No, educational stuff.
I'm addicted to educational stuff and podcasts. Like for example, I love the All In podcast, and I just feel like I'm getting a free ticket to the room with four brilliant guys, or like whoever I'm listening to, and it when you are a founder, you are often very extreme, and you just want to improve all the time, and there's no like stop button in a way, and I have to stop myself sometimes, because when I get to the weekend, for example, and I don't have meetings, I get stressed if I don't really listen to YouTube, listen to some of the
Yeah.
podcasts that I want, because then I feel like I'm not taking advantage of all that knowledge out there, and I just want to become smarter and smarter, and I want more information and more information. But it's like with the internet and YouTube, it's pretty you can't really exhaust it, so you can always do more, and that's the
I
challenge.
have I have the exact same problem. When I have a
Yeah,
little bit of free
it's a big
time,
problem.
and I'm not doing anything, I sometimes feel perhaps this not only an urge to do more, because again, the truth is, in you're a sole entrepreneur, I will certainly be, there's no doubt about it. I'm on the younger side of that journey personally, but that's what you said it perfectly. I think it was beautiful. I just want to be better. Right? I just want to be better, to know more, to understand more, to be great. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I don't want to get too philosophical here, but obviously my favorite writer of all time is Nietzsche by a large margin. And I read all the stuff 15 times. And
Yeah.
the
That's
ultimate,
that's strong. I tried Nietzsche once, but I found him to be a little. It was a little bit heavy stuff.
oh, it's
Like
hard to read. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty hard but yeah, it's
But the concept of the Ubermensch, right, is concept of something greater and beyond good and evil and so on. There's to me this it's so interesting you say this. How do you for you? Because sometimes I think it again it made me sad when I don't use my time productively. I mean, I'm the old master of my life, and I sort of use a third perspective to say, well, Sam, you could have done more here. Could have read more here. You took an hour and 20 minutes off. What the hell you're doing? Tell me more about how you're. I mean, you said that you need to force yourself to stop, which I think is quite a big extent, I suppose. To how much is that you think? How much do you think it can be to the detriment of the life you live? To perhaps want to be better to that full extent. Do you sometimes philosophize with yourself on
yeah.
is that really necessary?
No, I am like I totally buy the premise for the question. I think about it a lot. It's really difficult because somebody I think when I first became a founder, I talked to the serial entrepreneur who compared starting a company to extreme sport, and in extreme sport, you also you need to sacrifice a lot, you need to give up a lot to do the training because it's hardcore competition. If you want to be number one in the world, then there's 1 million others that also want to be number one, and then you need to be extreme in your choices and in what you do, and that is difficult for a founder, that like, when do you stop, where do you stop? I think most founders probably don't see it as sacrificing so much as other would see because they just love it. I don't think I've ever felt like going to work since I started working because it's my own companies. I go to work and I don't know, it just feels like my life. I just love it. But of course, it is important to me, and I want to throw that in, that I have time with my friends and my family, and I prioritize that a lot. But yeah, so I do think that's important for everybody.
Yeah, I think it is important for
Even so,
sure.
the
I think
social
it
life.
what you just said reminds me of David Frost. David Frost says, "Don't aim for success if you want it. Just do what you love and believe in, and it
Yeah,
will come naturally." Right?
yeah,
The and as a entrepreneur like yourself, a serial builder, perhaps will probably be an even better term to describe you in this case. One thing I'd love to finish on is because it's something that let me tell you this. I have a Google basically Excel a Google sheet, pardon me, and with all the ideas that I come across, I say, you know what, this could be done better. We could
uh,
do this perhaps, and I perhaps document all of them in an Excel sheet. Last time I checked, there was 164 entries. Right. Well, the so for
I
you,
love it.
I want to finish with you're in the middle of doing this. You're in the middle of obviously launching this first from your perspective. And I think I never heard of a AI basically only CFO, so it might just be the first in the world. But I'm sure that you have well, first and foremost, what problems are you still haunted by perhaps the fact that you haven't found a solution for it yet? And because you learned so much, you touch on so many things, but then from that polymath, perhaps, how do you stay diligent in this concept, which you said that to be the greatest at anything, you really need focus and obsession over this focus. Because look, the reality is that business is war. All right, somebody else will
Yeah.
take the first spot
It is
if you don't want
fucking
it.
war. Like, it's being on the savannah, it's eat or be eaten.
Exactly. So tell me about, I suppose, a few problems that that perhaps you still are thinking that you haven't found a solution and that haunt you a little bit, and then how can founders that are polymath like ourselves be able to also be understanding that that focus on greatness, on being number one, is absolutely necessary for it to happen.
Yeah. Actually, I think I'll start with one of the things you just mentioned, focus, because I have to be completely honest. There's nothing that comes to mind. I am so 100% focused on Scaleup Finance and Nume that I don't think I'm not receptive to other ideas right now because this requires my full 100% attention. So it's actually funny you say, because I have had many ideas just like you, and
Yes.
but I'm actually not writing them down because I'm just, you need the persistence, and you need to like do it, and you need to be there for the long haul. I was, as we talked about earlier, I was in my last company for 11 years, and I do feel like sometimes I meet founders that are kind of jumping ship or jumping back and forth. Like, and of course you should do it if like you should close down ideas or projects that doesn't work. But if I start a company, and of course, we kind of, we get the traction and we hit the milestones we like, but like I'm there for the long haul. I'm going to be in Scaleup Finance for the next 10 years. I know it. And then maybe after that, let's see what kind of date we
I
have reached.
I think this was the answer that I was expecting, by the way. Just saying.
Okay.
I think this is the perfect answer you just mentioned, because I really find that when you find your thing, right?
Yeah.
When you hear Steve Jobs talking about Apple, when you hear Jeff Bezos talking about Amazon, there was nothing else. There was nothing else. Not because they don't see the fact that that other things can be done better. All entrepreneurial people understand that. But when they found their thing, when they like Edward Leonard talk, the founder of Polaroid, which is one of Steve Jobs' basically idols, actually, which is interesting. That's the exact same thing, right? He was so obsessed. All of his life was revolving over that specific thing. And I think there's beauty in that. I'm typically more naturally interested and admirative of people like Da Vinci, for example, that touch on so many things. But I understand the complexity behind all of that. So I really appreciate this answer.
The good thing is that not like there's no two people that are the same, right? We all wired differently, and I also like Da Vinci. He's incredible too, right? And I also think there's some beauty in a sense in doing more than once. For example, I wrote my books actually while we are building, so it's not because I can't. Sometimes then I get a little side project or something.
Right.
But right now I'm pretty obsessed with one thing.
I got it. We touched a little bit about that in this episode, but tell me about what the future basically is like. The autonomous agents, specific to finance and what you're focusing on, if you could. Tell me how you see it unfold. Tell me about the fact that, again, this is going to be a global, perhaps, software that can help companies all over the world that are in a situation in which is your target audience. Make us dream, Alexander. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll stay a bit in the abstract here, not to like go too much into all the specific things that we work. We also need to keep some kind of secrecy, right? But our dream, at least, is to. No, let me say something. Let me start differently. When I exited my last company, it was very important for me that the next project was something big. Like I want to solve big, hard problems. And in my view, financial management for SMEs is like one of those things. It has been unsolved for decades. And I feel like, when you talk to a lot of startups, they're very obsessed by, solving, I don't know, going into enterprise contracts all the time. But at least some of the market data I have shows that there's like approximately 1.2 million companies in the world that have more than 250 employees, so like the definition of an enterprise. And then there's actually a little bit more, slightly around the same number, where they are between 100 and 250 employees. But there's around 50 million that are between 5 employees and 100. And it's just, the everyday life for people in 5 to 100 employees compared to the mid-market and enterprise is so different when it comes to financial management. We talked about it in the start, because you don't have an internal finance function. You can't afford one. You don't have enough time to justify it. And when you then want to hire somebody, you can hire one person. And finance is made like it consists of so many different skills, which is why a professional finance function in an enterprise, they have like bookkeepers, controllers, and they have a CFO, and then they have this kind of middle layer with, I don't know, head of finance, head of FP&A, head of treasury, head of tax, or all this. In an SME, like you need to hire somebody who can do it, all of it, but just slightly good. And typically it's only a person that is more focused on the downstream segment of finance, which is bookkeeping and stuff like that, running the payroll, but not the more advanced stuff that a CFO does. So our dream, like our vision, what we really want to do is we want to give SMEs access to this because so many of the people I've been talking to for 15 years, when you ask them, what is the biggest pain point in your everyday business life? When you go to work every single week, what is like the things that just keeps coming back and annoys you because you don't have your handle on it? Like my claim would be that 90% plus of CEOs, founders, whoever is running like an SME, they will say financial management is one of my biggest challenges because they are de facto their own CFO. And that is a big problem. It's a big problem for 50 million out of 52 million companies that are above five employees. So we want to make sure that we have this catchphrase. We say we want to make people never worry about finance again, and don't lose sleep over it. And actually, we want to turn finance from being kind of a weakness into a strength. I have talked to I'm going on a rant here, but I've talked to so many founders that that we have helped during the last 4 years that have come to me and said, what is so amazing right now with Scaleup Finance is that before they were really worried if they were in the boardroom, or and then the investors asked them some question about their KPIs or their finances, and fuck, and they got slaughtered because they didn't know their numbers. And now where they're like, I'm actually, I'm really looking forward to getting these questions now. I actually want them to ask me questions.
Right.
That's what.
Mr. Alexander Wulff, it was such a pleasure sharing this conversation with you. Keep being so passionate. Keep being so passionate. Keep being so, I suppose, dreaming but very lucid in a way to get there. I think you'll be one of again, many people perhaps, but few in the grand scheme of things, in which could probably dent the universe with this. I really believe in it, and it was a pleasure to give you these platforms to end our episode. Perhaps please give some last words of wisdom for our audience.
Was that some last wisdom? Well, the first thing that pops into my head is persistence. I feel like it's this. When I look back at on my 15 years, we don't have time, but I could tell you the first 50 stories where I would have failed if I had stopped. And the only reason that I succeeded was because I kept on going. So success is 100%. Just keep doing it. Don't accept no fun answer.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.